CNBC TV18 and NuSummit present Transforming Financial Services with Technology and Innovation.
Hello and welcome to our special show, Transforming Financial Services Through Technology, presented by CNBC TV18 and NuSummit or NuSummit. NuSummit may sound like a new kid on the block, but really this company is probably one of India's oldest financial technology service providers. NuSummit is the new avatar of NSEIT, which was established in the late 90s as a captive IT services provider to NSE. Today, the company has been divested to a global fund called Investcorp and is emerging as a global powerhouse in providing IT services to the entire financial services industry and beyond. After all, who will understand technology for finance better than a company which cut its teeth providing IT backbone for NSE, India's original fintech? Joining me today is the Managing Director and CEO of NuSummit, Mr. Sreenivasan Anantharaman, to tell us about the journey of this company from the NSE womb to becoming a full-fledged adult in the competitive world of global IT and fintechs. I will refer to Anantharaman Sreenivasan as Ganesh because that's how we all know him.
Sure.
Thank you very much, Ganesh, for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Latha, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, well, actually, not so many people have heard of NuSummit as much as we've heard about NSEIT.
Sure.
So tell us this journey from NSEIT to NuSummit.
No, absolutely, and I think you alluded to that. So the journey of NSEIT really started way back in 1999 when it was incepted. And as you rightly called out, the genesis of it was on the back of the fact that you wanted somebody who has a sense of the domain and capital markets domain at that, and also have a technology flavor. And there were not many institutions in those days which was able to cater to a combination of that. In fact, truth be said, even today, that's a fairly big niche. And it's not that there are many technology services providers in that space.
Who understand capital markets.
Who understand capital markets and are able to kind of, bring in the technology relevance to it. So that was the genesis of it. Over the years, we largely catered to NSE, and that journey played out till about 2016-17. And really at that point in time, there was a thinking that on the back of the vast experiences that we have assimilated over the years, it was probably relevant for us to take this rich experience to the broader market and to the broader client segments. And that was the point at which we forayed into the broader market. What is interesting is also that in addition to the whole capital markets domain and the fact that we were born out of a legacy of capital markets, so naturally financial services was in our blood. But we also did a few inorganic acquisitions in that journey, playing out from 2018-19 to the 2020s, where we acquired a cybersecurity services company by the name Augis.
The right fit.
The right fit. And we acquired a cloud services company called CXIO. And then all of that kind of amalgamated with the digital transformation capabilities that we had in-house. And that became the kind of foil which would allow us to take all these cutting-edge technologies to the market and also ensure that they are relevant to the domains that we operate in. So capital markets and the broader financial services is where our sweet spot is. Bulk of the body of work is that. That's not to say that we don't do work outside of these segments, but that's really where our sweet spot is. So,
no, then tell us about that.
Sure.
Your sweet spot, capital markets services.
Right.
What all? I mean, is it mutual funds, exchanges? Whom all do you service within that? Banks? I mean, I don't know.
Sure.
Beyond financial services, who else would want your services?
Sure. So let me take that at two levels, right? So when you think of the financial services spectrum, and let's start with the capital markets. Capital markets is a very big niche in itself within the financial services spectrum. And when you think of a classical exchange, there are various facets of that exchange. There is clearing, settlement, order booking, investor relation. There is a whole plethora of work that you need to do. And again, as we all know, it's a very high throughput, low latency kind of an environment. So the demand and catering to that demand is significant. In fact, the challenges are something that you kind of are able to appreciate only when you work closely with those kind of customers. At one end of the spectrum, we dabble into all those nuances and details of working with a classical exchange. a clearing house, a brokerage ecosystem. So the entire spectrum is one that we cater to. Then when you think of it, we work with a lot of AMCs, right? We work with a lot of insurance companies. We do work with retail banks and all of that. So that's the whole slew of the whole capital markets and broader financial services institutions that we work with. Now, when you think of the other vector, which is really the technology vector, if you think of the genesis that I was talking about, we are good at digital transformation fundamentally. We are good at cybersecurity as an area, and we are very good at cloud adoption, right? And all of these are extremely relevant in the context of a classical digital transformation and the security flavor that you need to build around it. So if you think of just those as horizontal services, we have relationships that play out into large telco companies, large manufacturing houses, and so on and so forth. But these are largely on the back of our cybersecurity capability, cloud adoption, all of that. But fundamentally, our sweet spot is the intersection of the financial services domain and these technologies that come together to kind of render the right outcomes for our clients.
Okay. You know, one of the biggest adopters of digitalization and in large numbers is the Indian government itself.
Absolutely.
So anything you do in the public space?
Oh, yes. So interesting.
I guess you cannot name clients, but...
No, absolutely. Yeah. And without getting into specific names, the fact is that the largest identity validation program that is done in India is something that is done by us from a cybersecurity validation standpoint. So we do millions of validation on a daily basis for the backbone of that particular program. And that's one that's worth mentioning. The interesting thing about India is the sheer volumetrics. When you think of the exchanges, the volumes that we have are unparalleled across the world.
Largest in the world.
Largest in the world, right? So when you're supporting an ecosystem of that nature, there is a lot that goes into it, both from a technology intervention standpoint and also from an operation standpoint. So I think that's another point to be mentioned. If you think of some of the largest banks in India and the ones we work for, you're talking about millions and millions of customers, which are typically unheard of when it comes to developed markets. Having said that, there is a lot of relevance that we bring to for our global markets as well. So we do work with a couple of the largest exchanges globally, not just in India. We work with probably 22 of the Fortune 500 companies globally.
Okay, so what are the countries you operate in?
So we operate out of 3 markets. We work in US, we work in Middle East and India. Those are the current markets we operate in. We have some relationships in Europe, but we don't have a physical presence in Europe. In the other 3 countries, we do have our own presence directly. Okay. But the roadmap is obviously to also become relevant in Europe increasingly on a road forward basis.
Well, I got the broad picture in terms of sectors that you service, in terms of countries that you service, and your sweet spot of capital markets in financial services. Can you break it down for me and our viewers in terms of some interesting projects that you all have done so we exactly understand?
Sure. So maybe let me start with a cybersecurity program. See, one of the things about cybersecurity today is that a lot of the programs are essentially emanating from the fact that the identity is at the core of all your security controls and postures. Yes, yes. So fundamentally, when you think of zero trust cybersecurity, you fundamentally are saying that every device that you use, every person that gets into the ecosystem, every network that is there needs to be validated because it's dealing with sensitive information and there is data that's flowing through it. And fundamentally, that also plays out for all the applications that's there in the classical enterprise ecosystem. So identity access management is a very important area and one where we have a very significant presence globally. So we manage some of the largest financial institutions in the US, in Middle East, and in India in the context of these programs. Fundamentally, all the applications that are onboarded, all the identity validations that are carried out, the whole lifecycle management, not just onboarding, but also supporting in the road forward. So that's one of the natures of the program that I could think of. If you think of application modernization, there is an interesting program that we have done for the government of India, which is around, and it's all about bridging the research and development, supply and demand side.
Like a platform.
Like a platform, essentially. And this is the brainchild of the Principal Scientific Advisor's Office. But fundamentally, we are working with them to kind of take that platform to the larger ecosystem. So these are some of the very interesting programs that we have done.
All right, now let me pick up another part of your journey.
Sure.
You know, NSEIT is a cocoon. I mean, NSC was perhaps a cocoon, a large cocoon,
Sure.
a lot of work, but still it's, one area.
Sure.
Now you are being owned by Investcorp,
Yep.
which has, a global presence. How did life change for you? How
Sure.
does the terrain change for you?
No, absolutely. And to start with, I think it's probably a good idea to context Investcorp a bit. And if you think of Investcorp, it's as you said, a global alternate investment fund, which has close to $53 billion of assets under management. It operates out of 14 countries. It's got 480 professionals. If you think of the landscape, it's done about $2.6 billion of investment in the tech sector. $1.3 odd billion is in the IT services spectrum. India, private equity is about $850 million of assets under management. So we are talking about a very significant footprint and expertise, which has panned out over 42 years. And that whole rich experiences and leverage that we get is something that's for us to leverage on, number one. Number two, bulk of the portfolio investments from Investcorp are largely in North America and Western Europe. So suddenly what you do is you get an ecosystem of networks, business ecosystems, investors, the entire landscape that opens up for
the
you.
door,
It
yeah.
opens the door for global expansion, which is one of the big things that we are very focused on. So I think that's a huge leverage for us. And last but not the least, I think Investcorp comes in not with just capital infusion, but it also comes in with a lot of strategic direction on the back of the rich experiences that it has garnered. So even at an operating level, what we do is we have a think tank that works very closely and kind of renders what's right for our clients. We keep investing in growing those capabilities that are very relevant in servicing our clients better. So I think it's a whole package in the way it's played out for us. So we were fortunate to have NSE as our legacy, and that's brought us to this point. And the journey forward is with a partner like
The
Investcorp.
best possible parent in India and the best possible
Yes.
parent internationally.
Absolutely.
Ganesh, I'll have to take a break.
Sure.
But lots more questions on where the industry is headed,
Sure.
this big animal called artificial intelligence and
Sure.
ML, and how that expands or contracts work for you. All those questions after the break.
CNBC TV18 and NuSummit present Transforming Financial Services with Technology and Innovation. CNBC TV18 and NuSummit present Transforming Financial Services with Technology and Innovation.
Welcome back to this special show on transforming financial services through the use of technology. I have been speaking with the Managing Director and CEO, Anantharaman Sreenivasan, of NuSummit, a new kid on the block when it comes to applying technology services to global financial services and other sectors. I call him Ganesh because we know him as Ganesh. Ganesh, thank you very much for staying on with us. We spoke about, the role of NuSummit itself and its journey from NSEIT to NuSummit. Now tell us a little more about the terrain, the trends in technology. The word that gets thrown at us is artificial intelligence. Does that increase the number of jobs for you, or does it decrease in the sense people want you to do more for the same amount of money?
Sure. So let me probably take a step back and kind of contextualize the BFSI space the way I see it. So one is the imperatives of the BFSI space are that it's always been an early adopter of technology and an adopter at scale, if you may. And therefore, there are a lot of business model disruptions as a function of technology adoption, competitive pressures that play out, the need for being agile to ensure that you get out there as early as possible. And it all has to operate within the context of a regulatory framework, because unlike many industry segments which are not so much regulated, you have an institution that's very regulated. So when you kind of think of all these and you then look at it with the lens that we have to see, Gen AI is definitely a key disruptor. And it's a disruptor in a sense that it spans over a huge spectrum. So at one end, when you think of customer experiences, when you think of taking hyper-personalization at scale, when you think of bringing vast amounts of productivity, when you think of bringing AI and automation together for back office operations and processes, there is a whole gamut of what can be brought about. And therefore, Gen AI in the true sense of it is a huge disruptor. It depends on to your point around the number of resources and scalability and all of that. I truly believe it is a function of the maturity of the organization that is in consideration out here. How
much it is able to transform.
Yes, absolutely. Because, to be very honest, there are anybody and everybody today is dabbling with it.
Yes.
But it's a function of how are you able to kind of take that from a pilot scenario and transpose that into a production scenario. And that's, I think, where the key differentiator is. And for those enterprises who have been successfully able to kind of traverse this journey, you would find that there is a lot of benefits that's coming your way from a productivity standpoint, from a touch point with customers, ensuring that you're, really connecting with your customers well, so on and so forth. But I think it's a technology that's going to evolve. We are, for one, invested heavily in it because, again, I think the other key differentiator to my mind is that just understanding the technology is not good enough. You need to contextualize it with the domain in which you operate, right? So I think that's going to be one of the key differentiators, and we are betting big on that. If I were to kind of move on to another dimension and think of it from a point of view of the threat attacks that have gone up in the industry today, we all, it's mind-boggling, right? So, and threat attacks are getting more mature, the increase of frequency, and the methodologies in which they are adopting to kind of get to. And by the way, they are also using these technologies, right? So that has again brought out a very interesting dimension. So when you think of cybersecurity for us, you use Gen AI for cybersecurity to augment your services. But interestingly, you also need to bring in AI in a secure form, because AI, by the nature of it, uses vast amount of data sets. So the sensitivity, the confidentiality, and all of that.
Security concerns go up.
Absolutely. So, there is an opportunity out there for us to bring in a lot of control postures that need to be brought in actively by the adoption of Gen AI. So here is a point where you leverage Gen AI for all those good things that you hope to, but you also need to leverage Gen AI in the right way using cybersecurity and fencing the boundary condition.
You're best placed. You already have.
So incidentally, that's as luck would have it. We are fortunate to be in that sweet spot. Yeah. So I think those are the interesting things that we see play out. The other, and if I were to generally talk about a broader spectrum, agility we spoke about. So again, I think the whole leverage of cloud as a medium will continue to play a big part in how financial institutions kind of are able to become more scalable, more agile, more resilient. I think that's one. And last but not the least, I think the whole regulatory framework. So there will be, regulatory framework, as we all know, becomes extremely vital, but it is also very cumbersome. So there is a lot that needs to be done to ensure that you stay on top of it. So I think automation, along with some of these new age technologies, will play a big part in bringing productivity, which is so important, and establishing those standards and then keep on evolving for the challenges that need to be met with. So I think that's the way I see it.
Okay. Before I proceed to the next question as to what you see as the next blue sky project, before that, just an innocent question. Should we think of Gen AI like electricity? It took away a lot of work, but it brought a whole lot of things that the human mind could do or the human hands could do. Should we see that as a positive force in that sense?
I truly believe, for one, Gen AI will be a very strong, potent force to reckon with. If I were to be very honest, I think there are two sides of the coin out there. One, which is all the positives and the art of possible. And I think those are really where the focus needs to be, and all of us need to collectively, as leaders in the industry, focus on. But there is, unfortunately, a dark side in adoption of these technologies by the bad actors. And I think we need to evolve to a point where there needs to be, safe and secure adoption in some sense. Again, it's a very big gray area today. But the fact is that we can't be too callous about it. So in some sense, I think there is a lot to be leveraged on, but with the right, ground rails,
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And you already have a foothold there in terms of at least
Yes.
cybersecurity. But
Yes.
yeah, a lot more security will be needed. Okay, to come back to the
Sure.
NuSummit story.
Yeah.
If I were to ask you, what will be your next, if you think of your business as concentric circles,
Sure.
you're expanding to newer areas.
Yeah.
What would be the next new area
Sure.
that you may look at?
Not so much a new area, Latha, but if you think
New
of
product for the same
yeah,
client.
in that sense, if I were to think of the next 3-4 big things that we will be kind of already embarking on, one is our market expansion. And I spoke about the big leverage that we have and getting ourselves more globally relevant. We already have a rich set of credentials to work with, but I think the scale up of that is definitely a big priority for us. The second is the spectrum of our service offerings. So we are already into cybersecurity, into AI, into cloud, into data, all of that stuff, all the good stuff. So I think investing in service offerings and capabilities into those areas will be very relevant because these are evolving in nature and you always need to be ahead of the curve in that sense. The third dimension is one of the things that we have thankfully adopted long back is the creation of what you call intellectual property or solution artifacts or accelerators that really differentiate you from others, number one, and are able to add value to our client ecosystems because you're not just offering a set of services, but you're offering it on the back of a framework which hopefully accelerates their go-to-market time, are able to get quality done, get it first time right, so on and so forth. So I think there will be a whole set of differentiators or artifacts or IPs that we will create in this journey we have created in the past that will continue to be invested upon to kind of get to the end state that we desire.
Okay, just a final question.
Sure.
By training, I speak to listed companies and therefore drill them about their margins, their future growth. Tell me, to the extent that you can reveal, since you are an unlisted company, a private company, what are the revenue targets you are looking at? Do you double in 2 years, double in 4 years? How are you approaching the world of finance?
Sure. So Latha, we are just off a divestment, right? So we are now with our new shareholders. So it would be difficult to kind of call out the end state. But one thing which I can say with conviction is, as you would imagine, I think we have been on the back of a very, very strong CAGR. If you think of our last 3-5 years of CAGR, it's really kind of very good, very high digit numbers,
which is why Investcorp took you in the first place.
Yes, absolutely. And I think there is nothing that should kind of alter that path that we have already started delivering on. And I think that will continue to play out in a very good way. And we are looking over the next horizon of maybe 5 years where we kind of become very significant in scale as a niche services company that's dabbling in all the core digital, cybersecurity, cloud technology. So you will be a combination of being a very niche player, at the same time a scaled up niche player.
Fair point. Thank you very much. That sounds really exciting and an ambitious goal as well. Well, that's the word coming in from the NuSummit, a new kid, but with a lot of history and a lot of experience already. That's NuSummit for you. Thank you very much for watching this special show.
CNBC TV18 and NuSummit present Transforming Financial Services with Technology and Innovation.